So welcome to the AFT Construction Podcast. Today, we're fortunate to have on Emme Diane. Welcome, Emme.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So Emme's joining us from Park City right now, and Emme is an esthetician and CEO of Emme Diane. And so Emmy's built this amazing company, skincare products as among many other things. And I know my wife is a huge fan of your products, as you know. And so let me ask you this, Emme, as we dive into this, what is the key to any successful company? We talk a lot about marketing and branding. So no matter the industry, you're in a much different industry than I am. So what have you found to be key to reach that demographic that you're looking for?
I would say that passion drives everything. I have such a passion for skincare, having had problematic skin my whole life. I absolutely love helping others who are struggling with their skin. And I know that that's sort of the driving force behind the success of the company, because without that passion and without that, desire to help others, I guess it just then becomes, like a hobby. And I think that is what, keeps me going day after day after day is knowing the real change that I'm making for people. And I'm sure you can relate to that, with your business and, seeing the change and difference that you make for, the families you build homes for. So.
Well, that's great perspective. It's interesting. I think for anyone to be successful in business, and you kind of hit that on the head, Emme, you said there has to be a passion. And so this is something that hit home for you personally. And now because of that, because you have a passion for it and you want to see other people's lives change, I'm sure that there's been inspiration and you've gained traction off of that, just seeing people, their confidence change. It's that emotional journey, right, that you can brand and market.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So talk us about, how did that start? Being that, you mentioned that to get in skincare, you had some skincare challenges, so what made were you always interested in the medical side, and going to be an esthetician, or did that just kind of fall into place?
Well, I struggled with my skin from such a young age. And to be honest with you, I feel like I was born to be an esthetician and to work in that field, because it's literally all that I ever wanted to do. So I feel lucky that, I wasn't one of those people that, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. It sort of just, it just was in me all along. And I started out in sort of the spa aesthetics for many years and learned a lot of skills as far as customer service and, how to treat clients. And then I did branch into the medical side, where I worked for some doctors and helped open up a Medi Spa in Marin County, which was amazing. So I got kind of more of the medical side of my knowledge. And from there, I really wanted to mix the two. And that's when I branched out on my own and started a skincare practice that was really about the client and the experience that they have, but also very results driven. So I wanted to make sure I blended the two together. And that's sort of how Emme Diane became Emme Diane. I will say, though, that I was kind of one of those birds that was, pushed out of the nest, because when I started my practice, I was actually fired by a doctor who unfortunately had some bad business and ethical practices that I didn't want to be a part of. So after getting fired, I didn't really have a choice. It was either, it's time to fly or, we'll call it a day. So I decided to go for it and started out very, very small in my one-bedroom apartment, in fact. And just over time, I was able to slowly grow the business to what it is today, which is far greater than I ever dreamed, quite frankly.
So what's interesting is, I think most people, it's very similar. Whenever I speak to entrepreneurs and people in any business, there's always this beginning. And it's interesting. The beginning is different for everyone. Some people have always had experience in their field. Some people maybe out of their field, but there's different traits that they learned, right, as business. And one thing you mentioned that I took note of, you said the client experience, you'd worked in spas, the customer service, which really positioned you, because that client relationship is super important in any business. For me as a builder, having that client relationship with my client is so important, right? Because there's comfort that they have in our conversations and meetings and throughout the journey of construction. How does that apply to skincare? I mean, how does a client, find peace in saying, okay, I have confidence in Emme Diane, that it's not only just a positive interaction with her, but it's also result driven, right? So how have you learned to kind of fine tune that customer service part of your company?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. And I was thinking about this at one point where, long time ago in my first job, they had a ongoing training. They would call it salevis. So it was like sort of selling and service, because estheticians are not known to be good at selling products. It's just not in our nature. But I had learned through that I'm actually doing a huge disservice to my clients if I am not educating them on everything that they need to know about their skin, not just, what we're going to do for their treatment and what the goals and the, what to expect, but also what I need them to do at home as well. And so, I always took away from that, I actually was not doing a good job for them if I didn't give them all the tools and knowledge that they deserve, and the how-to. So to me, that was a big aha moment, because I don't really, and I still don't really see it in the spa aesthetics world. It's amazing to me. Or I think of, when I get my hair done, there's been one person that has ever told me exactly what they want me to do at home for my hair, which I don't know anything about hair. So to me, that's a huge part of, I think, having a successful business, at least in the beauty industry. But I think that that's true too in any industry, that the more knowledge that you give your client, the better they're able to make a decision. And, not just about, working with you, but also, to have that rapport, and also that relationship where you work well together and you find the solutions for the client, whether it be skincare products or whether it be, like for you, what building materials, or who you're going to connect them with for vendors. But that's true in all cases, I think. So the more you give to your clients, I think the better it is.
I love that you shared that. It's interesting because that term salevis, I'm going to have to remember that, because there's the sell side, there's the service side, and they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super important. And you made some points there that really apply to me. I've looked back, at our company and where we've made mistakes. As a builder, there's a lot of things to me that are common knowledge, right? Like, maintenance of a house and certain things to do to upkeep wood flooring or other products in the house. But my customers probably don't know that. Even if you're buying a vehicle, you may not know all the different service things for this vehicle. And you mentioned that with skincare, right? Or your hair, the example you gave, Emme, that, you may, the good hairstylists are the ones that give you a checklist, if you will, of things to do to maintain it after your consultation and service appointment. And so that's really important, because where we've had the breakdowns of communication is where we're not laying that plan out, where our customers now have a clear vision and we're setting them up for success. We're setting them up with that knowledge.
Absolutely. I think that that's absolutely key. And not only, just doing the best job for them, but also having that rapport with the client, which is everything.
So how do you instill, I mean, one of the challenges, for you as you've built a successful company now, it's one thing when it's Emme Diane, right? You've had this experience, you've, worked in the spa, you understand the client relationship. And, when you're doing that one-on-one consultation, you have that candor, that comfort, that knowledge. How do you now instill this in everyone that works for the Emme Diane brand? How do you make sure that everyone on that totem pole and, through that chain, that they're all linked and speaking the same tone, speaking the same language?
Oh, that's a challenging one. I actually recently, because of the growth of the business and just how I really needed to tend to more of the business side, I've had to step away from the treatment room. So I'm actually not in the treatment room anymore, but I did train my esthetician, Danny, who is truly amazing. She trained with me for, at least 4 to 5 months, day in, day out, just going over all of the information that she needs to know. And she actually started with me as a client, which was really helpful because she walks the talk herself. So a big part of that is, all of my employees are users and believers of the product. But especially those who are touching base with the customers, it's almost like, I feel like the training that we do with them, it's like, do you remember those build your own or make your own adventure books?
Yeah.
Or, you would turn to one page and you got to choose two things. And I feel like that's kind of how the training went, because there's not really one streamlined, answer or way to explain things to clients. And so that takes a lot of time and a lot of hands-on working knowledge. So, that my team that's been with me has been with me for quite a while, and they've got it down, which is awesome. So,
Yeah.
but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of dedication on their part and my part too. And but it all kind of comes together, and they definitely are super excited when they have a hand in the success of our clients, for sure.
Well, I would imagine it's a little complicated too, because when you're dealing with people, in skin conditions, everyone's going to be different. They're going to have different challenges, different issues, things that are important to them, depending, especially, I would imagine, on parts of the country, depending on sun exposure. So there's all these elements that it's not so straightforward. It's very fluid because it's going to be a case-by-case basis.
Exactly. Yeah. And, that's what makes it tricky, but that's also what makes it interesting and fun. So, and I've always said that, there is a solution to anything, but sometimes we just have to dig a little bit deeper, and uncover, what these differences are for either the client, where they live, what they eat, what they do. I mean, all sorts of different factors. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and one thing you said that I liked, you had talked about Danny, your esthetician there, that she had shadowed you for 4 to 6 months. And I think that's one thing that every company should do a little more of. It was interesting as it relates to building. I was networking with a builder out in California, and their mentality is, we like to hire our staff that doesn't have a ton of experience. And the reason being is because I can teach them my way. I could teach them our methods and our protocol as a company. And what they do is they don't just kick them off the end of the pier and say, okay, go figure it out, Emmy. Here you go figure it out with these clients. They're saying, okay, you're going to have 4 to 6 months shadowing this project manager, shadowing this superintendent who's been experienced, well-versed, understands the company culture. So they get ingrained for 6 months of the communication and the day-to-day. And what ends up happening now, they understand the culture and they can now implement it and go on their own. And so in essence, that's something you're already practicing, is that you're having someone shadow. And so that's the easiest way, especially where you're working with something as fluid as you are, where every case is different. Now someone at least understands how Emmy would handle it if it were you.
Mm-hmm, totally. And I would say, even for me, there's new things I'm constantly learning. Like, for example, right now with, COVID-19, everybody's wearing masks, and oh my gosh, that is doing such a number on skin, whether it be breakouts or dryness or irritation. And so, having to learn and figure out, how do we navigate this and make sure that people take care of their skin, with these masks. So there's always something new. There's always a curveball that we, have to work on figuring out. And I think too that collaboratively with a team, it's easier and better because everybody has different experience to bring to the table too.
So how do you get up to speed that quick? Because, COVID's going to impact me a lot different than you. And where you're dealing with skincare, where now, people's faces are covered and they could have breakouts or they could have different, things happen. How do you educate yourself? How do you, factor that? How do you diagnose it and give them treatments, because that's almost learning on the fly like most of us are right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I would say first, it would come from my own personal experience. So me experiencing it myself and seeing what happens. And, fortunately, I do have very problematic skin, like I said. So, I am one of the best guinea pigs for sure. So, and then, learning and hearing also from other skin professionals. I do like to, connect with other estheticians around the country and kind of see, what they're finding as solutions. So, I think definitely networking with other people is huge. Um, but yeah, I mean, this COVID thing is definitely throwing us all for a loop. And one thing that we did do too in the beginning is I was actually able to talk with one of my labs and formulate hand sanitizer right out of the gate. And this is one thing that I personally am really proud of. I'm proud of my team and my husband Kirk. He had a hand in this, but we actually included a free hand sanitizer with every order. People could still order it, but we just felt like maybe this is a way we could do a small part and help people. But yeah.
I love that you did that. Yeah, it's something we're all trying to figure out. What's interesting, though, you had talked about too, just the networking, because one thing that's really important for any industry is that you're networking with like-minded professionals, right? And
Mhm.
understanding, some of the trials that they're having, trial by fire, some of the experience and mistakes they've made, and now you can apply those in for quicker growth. And social media I found is a great connector for that because I found just in my own network to network with different builders and architects and designers throughout the country and see how we can better our process and refine our systems more. But one thing that's really interesting about social media, and I know you're very active on social media that we can talk about now, is that I see the crossover too. It's funny because we have a client now that we're building for, these clients because the wife is like, I see Emme Diane, I see Emme Diane. I know that you know her, you're connected through Instagram. There's a cosmetic dentist, Dr. Brian Harris, that, we built for, and one of my customers now is having work done by Brian. And it's funny that they find each other, in totally different markets. Your market's totally different than mine, Emme, yet we have clients that work with you and work with me in that crossover.
Totally. It's awesome. I love it.
So how has social media changed? I mean, when did you, going back, I guess before we bring in the social media side, I mean, you had talked earlier in the conversation, this humble beginning that, you were kind of forced on your own. You're in this one bedroom apartment, and you're starting your own business. I mean, where did you start as a small business owner, anyone listening? What were those first steps? How did you figure out, okay, do I come up with a name? Do I come up with my licensing, product? How did that process start?
Oh gosh, that's so multifaceted. So actually, when I when I started my business, I started with a different name for my company, and it was shortly after I decided that I wanted to start formulating my own skincare products, and I needed to trademark my business name, and I went through a lawyer and did that whole process, and it had turned out that somebody had actually already filed a 1B trademark on that name. And with a little investigating, it was actually somebody who knew what I was doing and snagged it before I could get to it. And I was devastated. I I was told I could probably fight it and win, but the amount of time and money, it wouldn't be worth it. And so that's when I sort of reached out and networked with some of my friends who are in marketing and to come up with another name. And that's when they kept saying to me, they're like, your name is it's such a good name for a brand, Emme Diane. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, that is so pretentious. I would never do that. And so that I listened to them though, and that's kind of the name of the company came to be. But it was a huge shift. I mean, I had already had labels printed for product and everything. It was devastating. But in the end, I feel like it was the best move that could have been possible. And so that's kind of an interesting story because I feel like in my business, especially when I did begin to formulate products, I felt like I came up against so many brick walls constantly. Like, all the time I would almost be to the end of a formulation and then the lab would turn around and say, oh yeah, but we can't do that. And it's like, oh my gosh. And so I have to start over somewhere else. So I think, one thing that was big in my business, I guess, is perseverance and persistence and not giving up, because there were a lot of roadblocks that I came across that were like that, and a lot of things that are out of my control or even out of my knowledge base. But finding people and ways to, figure it out in the end. Everything is figure outable, and that was I think it still continues to be something that, as the business grows, we always come across more and more issues, more and more problems. And sometimes they get bigger as the business gets bigger. But you just always have to remember, like, okay, you've gotten over this roadblock, you can get over the next one.
Yeah, there's definitely value and positivity as an entrepreneur and business owner, right? Because as you mentioned, sometimes the problems get more complex and difficulty, but if you have that positive mindset, you can fix those. But what's interesting, I mean, as you were speaking, I mean, I'm really curious to ask your background just with all these things, because when you go into product, you know, I'm in the service industry, so there's one aspect to that. But when you're in the product industry, you know, you have to start thinking about manufacturing, you know, distribution, you know, marketing, sales, conversion, you know, branding the name. And so there's all these elements, because now you have to source the product, you have to sell the product, you have to distribute it, you have to label it. So did you have history with that? Did you have experience with that? Did you figure it out as you went? I mean, how do you incorporate all those little details in different industries and to be where you are today?
Oh my gosh, no, I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about it other than the products that I had sold at the spas, or the Medi spas that I had worked at. And so when I began this journey, I had some amazing mentors over the years who kind of guided me more in like an ingredient knowledge base. And from that, I was introduced to a couple of labs that I could work with the chemists there to formulate the products. And I really knew nothing other than my hands-on knowledge of, okay, I like this ingredient at this percentage because it does this, but I need it to couple with this. So it was kind of like a loose knowledge. And so they would guide me to help create like a completed formula. And I like to call my products my babies, because from about start to finish, they take about 9 months to formulate, between
Wow.
R&D and then, you know, quality control and, you know, the testing that they do and stuff like that. So it's a process. But I knew nothing about that. I mean, even down to like labels. I joke that, you know, how they say that, you know, what Steve Jobs and Wozniak started in, you know, their garages. Well, I started in my carport because I printed the labels initially on my home printer, and then I had to go down and spray them with sealant so that they would be waterproof down in my carport. So, but you know, over time, like I said, just sort of with networking and asking around, I think one of my biggest skills is I'm a big observer of things, and I'll watch and wait and see how it pans out for other people before I might jump into something. You know, whether that be like a new ingredient that's out on the market, and how does that actually pan out? Because a lot of them don't. They're just very trendy, and it's, you know, as women, we have, I like to call, shiny ball syndrome, and we like anything that's new. And you know, what I've learned over the years is what has always worked will always work. And so sometimes we have to, you know, disengage from all of like the new shiny things that they keep coming out with, you know, because in the end, you know, the proof is in the pudding. If they work, they work. And if they don't, they don't. But so, you know, one thing I'm starting to dabble into just to help grow my knowledge is taking a cosmetic chemistry course, so that I can hopefully have educated conversations with my chemists to improve our formulas even more. But all of this, like you had asked, you know, did I know any of this? Did I have any, you know, experience? And, you know, the answer is no. You just kind of find these paths, these avenues, and, you know, take on the projects where you can, and ask for help. So.
No, that's great advice. I think asking for help, you know, that we mentioned earlier in this conversation was really important, building that network. And you were fortunate to have some very successful people in your network that could help you through the process. So if I were Brad and I'm starting my company today and I have my product, you know, what would be the first step? You know, you talked about even now as you've been more refined, you're taking a cosmetic chemistry class, you know, to have a little bit more of the lingo as you're working with your chemists and R&D. You know, if I were to start a product, you know, how did you find manufacturing? How did you find distribution? And then, of course, were you running all your marketing? You know, what comes first, I guess, in that process?
Well, um, if it were somebody new, I would say, start small, and, start with, I started with one product, and I only grew my business as much as I had cash flow, because I've never taken a loan out on my business or anything. So I've always worked with what I've got. But
I was going to ask you that. So you had, how did you find private money? Did you go to the bank? And so for you, you just started with what you had and started building very conservatively all the way up.
Yeah, I didn't, back when I started the business, I guess I didn't even think that you could go to a bank to get a loan or ask for that. And quite frankly, I was a little terrified, because what if it didn't work? I don't want to be owing people all this money. But I did start slow. I did ask lots of questions. And the biggest thing for me is that, and I think part of the reason I hit brick walls a lot is I wouldn't settle. There's definitely an easier, cheaper way to go about manufacturing skincare products, but because of the parameters that I have on my products and why they work so well every time, is because of the ingredients that are in them, and also the ingredients that I will not allow to be in them. Just like any industry, the beauty industry is really run by some big companies like, Estee Lauder, L'Oreal. They own so many smaller companies that you wouldn't even believe it, but they also are the driving force behind what raw materials labs will have on hand. And a lot of times those won't work for me. So I have to, find other ways to get it done. So never skimping on the quality just to, say you have a product. I don't think that there's longevity in that. That's important to me as well. And I think for any business, your quality is outstanding. So, and I know that that's part of what makes you so successful. So.
Well, thanks, Emmy. It's interesting because what I like that you said, you start slow, don't settle, right? And one thing is even as you're a young company, you have one product, you're going to grow, it takes time, but you had a vision to where you're going to be. And so you wouldn't take the shortcuts, you wouldn't, deviate from that vision and that perspective. And I think that's true for any company. I look where we were when we started AFT, we were probably similar. We're doing small projects. We knew where we were going to be in 5 years. We just didn't have the resume yet. We didn't have the products. We didn't have all the accessories, right? Kind of as you're mentioning. But from a marketing perspective, we understood, okay, we're going to paint the picture of some key things that we're doing that's going to attract our customer base. And I think that's really important that you've done is, you start building your base, and then you can now leverage that and you can build on that. Don't jeopardize the quality, keep that there. So with that said, how does, one of the difficulty things or most difficult things, for you is understanding, okay, how do I track my conversion cost per customer, right? How am I tracking, sales and, all the marketing we're leveraging. So how do you do that now that your company has grown so much?
Well, my amazing husband, Kirk, I would call him our CFO. He's really sort of the money guy, which is great because money is not my forte at all. So he's really, really good at tracking our numbers, our sales, and seeing, when and where we can invest in different things, whether it be marketing, our website, more product, whatnot. We have an amazing social media team too, is able to kind of give us the stats on, how is our marketing efforts panning out? If we're, having any ads that are running, what is our return on our ad spend? So we keep all of those things in mind, and also we're highly aware of them today, especially as the business has grown, because, I think that people can spend a lot of money on things that maybe aren't panning out. And so if you're not paying attention to those numbers and if they're actually working for you, I think that can definitely be the demise of a company for sure. But I feel like between the team that's sort of managing that, we've got a really good handle and a good eye on what does work for us and what doesn't, quite frankly.
Well, that means you're a good CEO, right? Because good CEOs understand what their strengths are, what they're good at, and what they're not good at, and things they're not good at, they delegate and let someone who's better, right? And I've seen that in my company. There's some things that I'm just not as good as our team, and so those are ones I should pass off like as quick as possible. But it's interesting because you talked about marketing and some of the ads you're doing, and through some of the platforms. Are there any platforms you have found that work better for your brand and company? Whether they be Facebook or Instagram. What are some of the ones that you've seen more success on?
For us, I would say definitely Instagram. Facebook, a good second. We did actually just stop doing Google ads. They weren't performing as well for us. I think it's more of the personal connection with people that is the driving force with our brand. It's always interesting too for us that anytime that I post something about me personally, picture of me, or especially me and Kirk, it's like we get so much engagement. So I think that people really like the fact that there's actually somebody behind the brand, somebody they can communicate with, and so I think that's why like social media traditionally works so well for us.
Oh, I can see that for sure. I mean, when you look at some of these other major brands that you mentioned earlier, they don't have that personality, because of their size of the company. Whereas you at Emme Diane, you can be a little bit more behind the scenes of showing Emme Diane and the personality, which draws people because there's, one thing, it's relatable, right? You have relatable content. And I love that you share that because job costing in any profession is really important to understand. What does this job cost us at the end of the day? How much time did we put into it? And we have to do the same thing with our marketing campaigns. Where are we diversifying our marketing efforts? Are we putting them in print media? Are we putting them in social media? Are we put them in our website? And then how are we tracking those leads and follow up to know, are these good dollars spent? So I'm sure that's something that you're spending a lot of time evaluating, especially at, with all the different products you have out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you scale? You started, you had one product. When do you make that decision? Okay, I think we're ready for product number 2 and 3. And now let's make this scalable. How did that process take place?
Well, I mean, back when I started the business, it wasn't ever, the products weren't ever supposed to be anything more than what I just gave to my clients who I saw in person in my little skin studio. But, as the success of the business grew and I saw how much it helped clients, it kind of happened to me. It wasn't the game plan, but our reach became much bigger because I had a client who had a cousin who lived in another state and had problematic skin and said, hey, could you help her? And I said, I don't know, we could try, like, let's have her send me some pictures and, I'll send her what skin regimen I want her to follow. And so that's really how the sort of like consultation online and long distance started, because she had fantastic results, which actually blew me away. I asked her, I was like, what have you been doing? And she said, exactly what you told me. And I said, it worked. Amazing. So that's kind of how that came about, because then I realized, okay, if I give them the right guidelines and tell them what to do, we can do this worldwide, which is actually what we do today. I believe we ship to like 16 or 17 different countries at this point. A little bit more difficult with COVID because the shipping is taking forever. But the beauty in it is that I actually don't have to physically touch someone's skin in order to make that change and difference, which is awesome. So that, from a scalability standpoint, is sort of how our reach became broader. From a product standpoint, when I first started out, I don't think that I gave much thought to, when is it time to launch a new product. I really just knew I could envision all the products that I needed in order to do my job. And so as I had the money, I just went for it. So today, I think we're a little bit more thoughtful in that process. But back then, I just, I think nothing could have stopped me back then.
So what's interesting, I mean, you kind of have two versions, or I should say 2 arms of the company, right? So you have the product side, right, that you're selling, and it's retail. People can go purchase, which is pretty straightforward that most of us understand. But what's really hard is to scale the consulting side, the customer service side, because there's time vested from you. But one thing you've done is you figured out, okay, I don't have to see everybody in person. I don't have to have them in my office, because that'll take time. I can do it remotely. And so that's going to expedite, especially now with Zoom and Skype and these different, it's easy to have those conversations from afar. But how do you manage the consultation part? Because, from a construction perspective and design perspective, if people are inquiring, you could spend all week vetting leads, right? Going and visiting projects to realize, hey, we're not a fit. This isn't good for us. Whereas, it's a lot easier if we have a list of questions that I can quickly vet someone over the phone to make sure we're the right fit. How do you do that for someone with skincare? Is there a fee to do the consultation? Because otherwise you may just be spending a lot of time, on things that may not produce sales, right? Which is the goal there, and to help, your clients at the end of the day. So how do you manage that consultation process?
Good question. So, when we have a consultation in person with somebody, I always make sure that I have our questionnaire sent to them ahead of time, not just, I guess, to vet out that it's a problem that I can help with, but also so that I'm prepared on what I need to share with them. So I suppose that would be sort of the vetting process. I will say honestly, like, I don't feel like there's really any skin issues that I can't solve, short of, like, if something's like skin cancer, absolutely outsourcing that.
Yeah.
Or randomly I'll get like strange, rashes on the body, which, then that would go to a dermatologist. But more or less, any sort of skin condition that somebody has, we can treat. So when I started the business and it was all in-person consults, I do charge for that and did charge for my time. And when I did begin to treat people long distance, it would be via phone or Skype. And I would charge a fraction of the consult fee, again, for my time. But then I realized that as much as I loved having these conversations with clients on the phone, I always had to follow up with a long email with all the information we had just gone over. And in the end, clients are able to retain the information a little bit better via email because they can always go back to it. So as my books filled up and I really didn't have any time or spots for long distance consults anymore, it all turned into email. And that way I could get back to it, over time. And I found too that I'm still very thorough with it all, but I'm able to kind of get a consult done in about 10 minutes as opposed to an hour being spent with them. And just as the business now has grown, as we've scaled, we now have the consult form online, which makes it much easier for the client to fill out all the information, upload their pictures, as well as a check-in form. And when it's not something that's taking up my time one-on-one, I don't charge for the consults. And part of the reason is that I personally feel like people have a right to have the information that they need to know about their skin. And I wrote the Acne Bible, which is sort of a booklet that gives somebody who's suffering with acne all the information they need to know about, like, what causes acne, what are all the triggers, what do you need to avoid, what do you need to do. It's about, I think it's like 18 pages long. So it's pretty in-depth. And a lot of people are shocked when they have a consult with me that I give them all this information for free. But again, I think that everybody deserves to have the information that they need in order to change their skin. And I think too, the intention is really because I want to help them. This also gains their trust. And I would say 99% of the time they become a client with me. So I think vetting the clients, I think they're vetting me too.
Yeah, right.
The biggest thing. So I think I see it from both sides. Like, can I help them? Chances are yes, but do they believe that I can help them, too? Because most people do come to me saying the same thing, that they've tried everything and nothing works. So why should this work too? So I think I do things a little differently, and maybe I give away the farm for free, but in the end, actually served them well, and it served me well too.
Well, it's interesting. What you're doing is you're building repeat clients, right? Because there's an investment from your side. And so, there's something to be said about, we use the term loss leader, but the investment, you're gaining trust. And that's a key word that you said, is by gaining trust in the clientele. That's how you gain repeat customers. That's how word of mouth traction. That's how, just that bandwidth and that ripple effect really has a big impact because, you know, as your vet, I wouldn't even use the term vet, but as you're working with them and you've essentially refined that, what you've decided is, okay, if a client comes in and they're taking my time personally, yeah, there's going to be a fee involved. But if it's an inquiry or something, something in 10 minutes, our process is down packed. We can get them information. And I found the same thing in our industry, that a lot of people call and say, hey, Brad, we need this done or this work done. And I'll see right away that my client is going to be in a much better position if I refer it to someone else, or just say, here's the landscaper or the pool company that you want. You don't need me involved. Putting your client in the right direction, sometimes maybe it doesn't mean business for you, but it always ends up turning out a positive experience, which now that trust and things become reciprocated over time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so, I guess for you, Emme, I mean, one thing that amazes me is, you are able to get back to your customers within 48 hours. So how do you do that? I know that's one of your staples, is you get back to them within, 2 days. So with the amount of leads and consultations and inquiries you have, how do you streamline that process to get back to them so quickly?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, that's a big reason I had to step away from the treatment room. But before that, it was just, oh my God, I felt like I was working 24/7. But I set aside time in the morning and kind of prioritize what I need to get back to, and I watch and make sure my response time is quick for people. But I sort of have systems and like templates and things like that I use that help me to get the information to clients in the most concise way, but also to make sure that they receive everything that they need. So I've just found that it's almost like Tetrising things together, I suppose, if that makes sense. But a lot of times though, I have to, I'm not able to use those templates, especially if I'm troubleshooting somebody that's having issues that are on the product already and stuff like that. So, but I think that it's one of those things. It's over time I've been able to finesse it, and I'm so used to it now that it's second nature to me. But I do make sure that I spend the first part of my day getting back to clients before I work on other projects and stuff like that. Because in the end, my clients are the most important to me, for sure. And I know, especially if somebody has an issue, time is of the essence. So that's, I think, why it's such a priority to me to make sure that we do get back to them in a timely manner.
Yeah, responsiveness is super important. I think any company listening, the quicker you can respond. And what's interesting is a lot of these, even outside that, I mean, you're doing that out of your own goodwill, right, Emme, to build your business. But what's interesting is they're like Facebook, for example, and House. These are apps that are tracking how quickly you're responding. Google, right? When people are inquiring about the business, if you don't answer that question right away or have someone in your office doing it, they're tracking that and that responsiveness and how those analytics will affect you. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, is that the quicker response, if you can be quicker responding to all those questions, it helps your analytics with those apps. But what's more important is, as you mentioned, it's getting back to the clients, because the reason we're in business is because of our clients. Emme, so now that you've built this enterprise and you've evolved, and you have all these different products and you have your systems down, everything's perfect, right? As always, right? As business owners, which we know is not the truth, but you've gotten better over time. So if you were to go back and you were to start Emme Diane today, what is something you'd focus on? Being a new business owner, knowing what you know now.
Oh gosh, that is a good question.
Any shortcuts you learned with marketing, any shortcuts with manufacturing or systems, maybe, hiring sooner?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I would say first, probably getting systems in place, because for the longest time, everything was just knowledge that came out of my head, out of my mouth, out of my fingertips. Like I didn't have anything written down anywhere. And so it's sort of like, like your grandmother has the most amazing recipes, but nobody knows them because they're just in her head. So for me, I was getting my brain on paper, not just from, a systems and processes standpoint, but also when I did bring the esthetician on, I really had no training guideline or guidebook at all for her to follow, because again, it was all in my brain. I would also say, delegating and getting more help sooner. I think I was in the treatment room a bit longer than, not that I should have, because I love it and I miss it on some levels for sure. I miss my clients a lot, but I did realize, and it kind of happened again to me with COVID, because we were shut down for several months. And it was interesting to me that I was more, I produced more, and we got a lot more done, and sales increased and all this when we were shut down. And I realized, okay, I really need to focus, in the business or on the business, as opposed to just in the treatment room. And so to me, letting go of the reins and, trusting other people to, carry on. I think that was a big thing for me, is learning how to trust other people with my baby. And I really have a great team. So I'm very fortunate. I couldn't have asked for a better team than I have, for sure.
I love that you shared that. It's the more successful business owners I speak with, it's always unanimous in the sense that they always say, I should have broke away sooner, right? I shouldn't try to do all the day-to-day and micromanage. Not that you're a micromanager, but you know what I mean? You're involved in all the aspects of it. And what they say is, to be successful as a company, the owner needs to focus on the business. They need to focus on protocol, on systems and processes, and then also business development and marketing, right? It's just the health of the business to grow and scale and be profitable. And then what needs to happen is they must delegate. They got to delegate. They got to trust their people and let them run and create that team where, they can do that, where they can have people that they can assign and delegate, and now they can focus on the business. Such great advice. And so, e-commerce has changed so much of many businesses. I'm sure yours, and you mentioned that with COVID, sales have gone up, which is kudos to you. That's amazing. People probably realizing that, the skin treatments and things they want to do. So how does e-commerce change your business? How do you capture that, with all the different avenues that are out there and competition for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, total game changer for me, for sure, just simply because, as a service provider, I could only do what I could do in a day. So if my schedule was filled, that's the max amount of money that I could make. And, I'm a big Tony Robbins fan, and I always remembered when I would go to some events long time ago, long before I started my business, he's always said, different streams of income, making sure you have those. And I didn't realize it until after the fact, when I did start selling product online, that now I do have a second, avenue or stream of income, sort of in the same realm, but, different. And then when COVID hit, like I said, I mean, my goodness, I don't know what I did right in this lifetime to have been able to create that before COVID, because I still have friends. I'm from California, and they're all shut down again, and friends and estheticians and people in the beauty world who are, I'm not even quite sure how they're making it at this point. But I think my lucky stars that I did go that route when I did. But it is definitely it is a different business model. And again, one that, I didn't really know much about. So I had to, jump into it and learn and grow as, we grew. So the e-commerce side is super interesting in the sense of, the reach is so much greater. But I would say, in comparison to other brands that are out there selling product, we're still, I would say, smallish cookies compared to most of the brands out there. And just because of the way that we do things, I'm absolutely okay with that. And I like growing small increments as opposed to like large jumps overnight, because we would lose the heart and the soul of the business, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So
And I love that you shared that, Emmy. I mean, you talked about diversification and different streams and, from brick and mortar, right? Brick and mortar behind you, the building, and then the service side, the consultation side, the product side. So you're in these different areas, that can build the business. And so, not saying this lightly again, I mean, your journey is amazing. I mean, just how you've really taken advantage of and really pursued, different opportunities and made the best of, every situation you've been put in. And it's never perfect, right? That entrepreneurship journey, how's that been for you? Were there ever times where you felt like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to pan out. I need to maybe change my career, do something else. I'm sure that may have happened. At least that's happened to me. So I'm sure I can relate. But were there ever times you doubted maybe the process there, but yet you still stuck to it?
all the time. I think I wanted to like throw in the towel like so many times before, but I think what kept me going, at least in the beginning, is that my clients, they were so loyal to me, and they, I felt like it was almost like they knew that they needed to say something. But if I was having a really bad day and just not feeling great about myself or the business or what I'm doing for people, that someone would, chime in and tell me like how this has changed their life or whatnot. But, I would also say that, one thing that I feel like I shared this somewhere else before, but the imposter syndrome, where, almost people are going to find out I'm not as great as they think that I am, or, maybe I'm not helping as many people as I think that I can. And that, especially in the beginning, was huge for me, because when dealing with problematic skin, it's not just you have horrible skin and now it's all amazing. There's sort of these ebbs and flows of, the skin going through like a purging phase or whatever. And so, I remember there would be days where like all of the clients, they're just problems constantly. And I would think to myself, like, who are you to think that you can help them? And that was an internal struggle that I had to deal with a lot, where, I had to take everything, with a grain of salt. We're going to get through it. And we always did. But it definitely would kind of knock me down a bit. And so that was one of the things that was a big hurdle or a big struggle for me too, is just, making sure that, I stayed true to who I am and what I knew, we could do, as opposed to kind of letting those negative thoughts get in the way. But there's always struggles for sure with business. But
I
like you
love
said,
that you
it's
shared
never
that.
perfect. But I think, just taking a deep breath and, picking it up the next day and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. I mean, it's real. I think by you sharing just the sensitivity there, we can all relate that, that self-doubt or the imposter syndrome, like, am I really making a difference? Am I really, you know, qualified? And, not that you're not qualified, but sometimes we have that self-doubt and they keep on. So what tips would you have? I want to be sensitive to your time, Emmy, for me or anybody listening, if we're out golfing, out in the summer, what tips would you have for listeners as far as little things they could do to keep their skin, healthy and, protected?
Well, definitely in the summer, and for golf, sunscreen all the time. That's a given, I'm sure. But it does amaze me, how many people still, forget about that. So, just making sure you apply and reapply your sunscreen constantly. I would say too, if, well, it would be different from, if it's a man or a woman or their age or whatnot. But, I would say if you are struggling with something on your skin, reach out to a professional. With the beauty with, social media is that you can hear, tips and tricks and like what to do for any problem, like both sides of the fence. And a lot of times, there's either one side is not true or the other side is not true or some. So I would always say, like, instead of just relying on, what you hear out there in social media, ask a professional and work with somebody. That would be another big skin tip that I would have. Drink lots of water, follow a skin routine twice daily if possible. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, we don't want to give away all the secrets, right? But I think, thanks for sharing some of those with us. And then, what's upcoming? What are you excited about, Emme Diane, that's upcoming for you?
Oh gosh. Well, we're always working on new product formulas, so that's a given. I would say too, just finding more people to help and sharing this with others. I think the biggest thing is our word of mouth, and experiencing it yourself and sharing with others. So that's one thing that continues to be something that excites me. But we're going to keep trudging this road and helping as many people as we can. So.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I can say that is true immediately in my household, as well as many of my client base and those I network with throughout Scottsdale and all throughout Phoenix are fans of you and use your product. And so where can our listeners find you for anyone looking at, reaching out to Emme Diane and getting that consultation? Where can they find you? Some of your social media handles, website, so forth.
So our consultation form is on the website. It's just www.emmediane.com. I'm Emme Diane on Facebook, on Instagram. And, you can always email me too. So there's lots of ways to get in touch. So.
Great. And we'll make sure that we have all of those in our handles here when we launched the podcast. So, Emme, thank you so much for making time and sharing that business insight and everything that you've learned throughout your journey through entrepreneurship with us.
Thank you for having me.